Did you know that 20% of residential properties in the United States of America are controlled by over 400,000 different HOAs? It's true that these HOAs offer lots of benefits. They keep the community clean. They keep people from painting their house pink. They might have different restrictions. You might have guard gated, and they generally keep the area safe. But there are also a lot of downsides, a lot of liabilities, and there's a lot of HOAs that are just trouble. And that's what we're talking about in today's video. Why investors should do their research before investing in a property with an HOA. Let's get into it. Let's get into what an HOA is. So an HOA stands for a Homeowners Association. So in its true form, an HOA is a deed restriction. But the deed restriction comes with a management company, with costs, and with responsibilities, regulations, and heavy-handed people who enforce them. It's an entire industry. They have a big lobbying firm, and they are not going away. So if you're going to invest in real estate, you need to understand how to work with them, how to deal with them, and how not to get bullied by them. So HOAs can be responsible from just collecting dues, which they do in the building I'm at right now because they don't do anything else, or they can be in charge of the water, the garbage, and they just, like in the condo that I own, it has an HOA, and they take care of all the water, all the garbage, all the landscaping, everything. Fitness facility, gate, security, all of it. It's covered by my HOA bill. That one I pay about 185 bucks a month. They repaint the building, they repurpose it. I actually was on the board of the HOA, but they can run the gamut. You could have an HOA that just has simple rules and restrictions, but the whole point of an HOA, it's a homeowners association that is there to stop you from suing the builder, right? That's why they were put in place. Because what the cities are doing, the reason why cities like HOAs is means they don't have to maintain the property. Like when the builders go and build in Las Vegas knows, hey, that's your responsibility to keep those roads paved. That's your responsibility to keep all this stuff going. We don't want to deal with it. Our tax dollars aren't enough for us. We want the HOA to deal with it. So it's a good thing for the city, but it may be a bad thing for you. Here's a few problems that you are going to encounter with HOAs if you have to deal with them. First of all, they have very poor communication because you are dealing with a management company generally. Most HOAs, to remain compliant with the local, state, city, whatever, will hire a management company. That management company, in order to scale, is going to manage hundreds of HOAs, and each one of their team members is going to manage between 7 to 20 HOAs. Because they're stretched so thin and they have to meet so many requirements, the communication gets lost. Like for example, my HOA. Technically, the chain of command should be me going in, filling out some form, sending it over to my HOA. They then have a board meeting. The board members who are in charge of the HOA, they're very similar to like a city council. The voters really don't matter. What matters is the board. So the HOA is communicating with the homeowner and with the board, and therefore you're not talking directly to the person they need to talk to. Just for things like that, just communication gets lost. So that's why you always want to put everything in writing when you deal with an HOA. Don't be like, well, I talked to the guy on the phone, he said that. Listen, that's happened to me. You'll lose money. And really, it's because these board members, this is a voluntary deal. A lot of these people have full-time jobs. Some of them aren't the smartest people in the room or world or freaking in their own family. And I don't mean to say that to sound nasty, but a lot of these people are power hungry. This is a position of power. A lot of them have hidden agendas, but in general, they just have poor communication. The communication is so bad with HOAs that just trying to get someone to answer the phone, it's a very big deal if you can get someone to have a good dialogue with. I'm very happy when I'm dealing with a good management company, a good board, because they do exist, but generally speaking, most of them are average, and because of that, you suffer, you lose, and it becomes problematic dealing with HOAs. Maintenance issues is another major reason why you need to be careful when you invest in HOAs. A lot of them are the first ones to send you a letter saying you have a weed in your yard with a picture. But you might notice that the asphalt is cracking all around the HOA because they have failed to maintain their property, because they have failed to maintain the budget. Instead of repaving the asphalt or recoating the asphalt, Barbara on the HOA, no offense Barbara on the HOA decided to plant flowers in front of the common area, right? So the HOA is responsible for the common area and the common elements of the community. And if they don't budget accordingly, guess what happens? You get a special assessment because they didn't maintain it. And I actually don't see that a lot in Las Vegas, but you know where I saw that a lot was in Washington. When I first moved to Las Vegas, when I first bought my first property, it was my first introduction to an HOA in the state of Nevada, in the city of Las Vegas. Prior to that, I had owned a condo and I had dealt with the HOA there, and they were no fun either. And by the way, later down the road, I saw that property had a special assessment for like $80,000, and that's the one I sold, my first investment. And boy, am I glad I sold that one. This current HOA that I bought here in Las Vegas, I bought the property in 2006. I bought it as a piece of dirt. They had not even built one property in the place, okay? What they had done, and this lady's actually getting in trouble, I'm so happy for her. And what happened was, and usually this is always the case, the person who's causing the biggest problems is usually running some sort of a scheme. This HOA just popped out of nowhere, and that builder gave all of their new communities to this HOA management company. This HOA management company, their objective was to fine you, to penalize you, and to make your life a living hell. I had a packet before I actually moved to Vegas that was this high of complaints I had received for the most ridiculous stuff. I remember one where the fence was this far off skew, and I got a letter. And finally I said, enough's enough. I've owned the property for 10 years at that point in time. I joined the board. I told the lady, I said, the reason I'm joining this board is to get you guys off the board and fire you. And that's exactly what happened, because this HOA did not make it a community. It made it a revenue source, and an HOA's responsibility is to make it a safe community. Learning from those mistakes of buying in HOAs, not knowing what the management company is, my one solution, if you are involved in an HOA and if you do plan on getting involved in owning properties for long-term in HOAs, definitely get on the board so that you have a voice that matters. Definitely, if you're buying lots of properties, make sure you're the board president. And if you're flipping properties, make sure that you follow the rules of the HOA. Otherwise, they can stop work order on your property, they can fine you, and they've got all sorts of government-like type of things that they can do to you. Another negative, they're biased and they discriminate. A lot of the reasons that you have problems with HOAs is a lot of these board members and board presidents might be prejudiced against one person in the community or against a group of people in the community. And I can speak about it firsthand. I've served on many boards. I remember one of the boards I served on, when we had problems with people, they would definitely go after them. And that might be because that person is renting to bad people, and therefore the board is prejudiced by that behavior, and they might target that person to try to hit them with fines and get them to comply. But then once you're on their radar, how do you get off? You know, every neighborhood has cliques and people who hang together, but when it's an HOA and they're a cliquist HOA, they hang together, they pass the rules, the laws that you have to abide by. One of the things you also find is they do a lot of favoritism. You'll find a lot of these guys, a lot of these gals have hidden agendas. A lot of the time, you're gonna have people who are making decisions not for the greater good of the HOA, but for the greater good of their family, their friend, whoever they're trying to help out. Now, obviously, that's not all the time and not even close to all the time, but I've seen it some of the time and it happens. Yeah, and one thing you'll find out is they might penalize one resident for one thing, another resident they don't penalize at all. They play favorites, they act cliquish, and that becomes problematic. Here's another problem with HOAs, the financials, man. If you've not got an MBA, or you haven't gone to accounting school, or you don't invest in real estate all the time, they're very complicated, these financials. They're done by accounting firms. I know this because by law, generally speaking, it has to be someone with the ability to audit an HOA. And these audits are more complicated than anything, but they expect you as a homeowner to understand the budget, right? Most people don't even do their own budget, so how the hell are they gonna pay attention to what an HOA's budget is? A lot of times with these HOAs, they have a hard time figuring out where the money went, who spent it, how to get misappropriated, why do we fix the same thing 4 times? They just waste it. And then once the problem happens, it's not their problem, it's your problem, because they have the ability to increase the fees, the monthly fees that you're paying. They have the ability to fine you. They have the ability to do a special assessment on you. And they have the ability to get anything they need done because they have a deed restriction on your property. So let's talk about that. Let's really talk about that. Okay, if you don't pay your HOA dues in Las Vegas and you own your house free and clear, guess who can take it from you? The HOA. Their rules are more ridiculous. If you don't pay your taxes, which I would consider very equivalent to an HOA fee, if you don't pay your taxes in Nevada, it might take them 3 years to go through the process of your HOA. In Nevada, they'll take your property away in 9 months. 9 months, they'll send that thing out to auction, okay? So they've got lots of power. At the end of the day, they own your property, you're just borrowing it. And I'll break that same thing down. If you own a property without an HOA, you don't pay your taxes, guess who doesn't own that property? You. You have to understand the liens, the money that's following your property title and chain, and understand that you are either renting it from the bank, or if it's paid off, you're renting it from the HOA, or renting it from the tax company. Another big negative, pets. They have pet restrictions. You can't have a dog that's 35 pounds or above. You can't have a puppy that's 12 pounds or below. They restrict that stuff. They might restrict that you can't rent out that property. Restrictions, restrictions, restrictions. It's all about restrictions. You can't rehab that property unless you do an ARC, which is an architectural review committee, to let us decide if you're able to do that. So you don't just have to go to the city, you gotta go to the HOA, then the city. Crazy, okay? So they've got massive amount of restrictions on pets, on you, and you just don't get your money's worth. It's a restriction. They got you by the short hairs. They can do whatever they want to you. And if you're investing in real estate and you're fighting HOAs, you're just wasting time. So what my recommendation to you would be, and I'm glad you stayed till the end, thank you for doing it. In general, I do not buy properties for rental anymore in HOAs. I flip properties in HOAs all the time, but for long-term holds, I don't suggest you buy properties in HOAs. So in summary, don't buy in an HOA unless you understand the rules, you're okay with them, you agree with them, and you get on the board so that you have a say, because otherwise you ain't got nothing to say and nobody cares. So before you invest in an HOA, make sure you do your research, make sure it makes sense, and also understand that those fees can come up and they're monthly and they're getting that money whether you get rent or not. Now, flipping in an HOA, completely different, okay? Renting in an HOA, generally speaking, it's hard enough to get your tenants to pay your rent on time. How are you gonna get them to follow this big of a book of rules, ordinances, and whatnot? For that reason, I don't recommend HOAs, and I recommend you follow my channel, subscribe, get on all my socials. Definitely check me out on TikTok. We're putting out new content daily, and definitely subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Peace.